Welcome back, soul friends. It's Tannaz Hosseinpour, your host of the Minutes on Growth podcast. And today we have a very special guest with us. She is a multifaceted healer. She's an artist. She's a teacher using ancient practices. And she is all about guiding individuals through emotional processing and energy healing. Welcome, Courtney Pearl.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a big
Uh,
fan.
I'm so excited to have you. Like before we got on this call, I'm like, okay, so I want to talk about this, and this. And she's like, so everything? I'm like, yes. There's a lot I want
Everything.
to discuss. So let's just dive in.
Yes. I'll try to be concise, not take hours and hours and hours of your time.
So, for those who don't know you, let's talk about your journey. Like, what inspired you to embark on this path as a healer and a spiritual practitioner before we dive into all the other concepts?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay. Well, to make a long journey as short as I can, I was raised in more of a Christian, Mormon, or um, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS for short, that we say around these parts. And so that was the culture I was raised in, both sides of my family. My parents are more nuanced. So my mom was really good at providing all kinds of things. She would read books on auras, she would read books on mysticism and spirituality, and she always had lots of questions. So I think that started uh, my upbringing was more nuanced and more like there's so much out there that we're not just learning at church. We've got all these different things that can be possible. And as I got older, going through certain things that are difficult, I went through struggles with infertility and health issues. And my husband struggled with addiction for a few years there while our babies were being born. And it was tough times and traumatic. And I think those moments happen in our lives so that it can be I call it an invitation or a mini death. You probably know all about ego death. Most people do, whether they know it or not. You've been through something where it shakes your core values so much that you realize, I can't keep doing things the way that I've been doing them. I thought I was doing what I thought was best, but this isn't working. And I remember getting really, really contemplative, really like just even like talking to the moon and saying like, please help me. What do I do? I don't know where to go. I don't know. For the first time in my life, I don't have a plan. And I was a person who always had a plan. Control was my religion. And so I just heard this like ethereal, otherworldly, didn't come from me kind of voice that said, you need to do art. This is something that you love to do, you used to do, and had lost that somewhere along the line. And I needed to get creative and I needed to step into that world. And then going through such a traumatic moment in my life made me really want to help other people through theirs. I sought out healing in all these different ways in Reiki and emotional processing. And it helped me so much that I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to help people. And I started to just do. I went to the Institute of Healing Arts and did their whole year program, which is like energy and emotional healing boot camp. And did the Reiki training, became a Reiki master, started integrating that into my life. Celtic spirituality really spoke to me. I started studying like the Gnostic Gospels of Christianity, and that really spoke to me. Secular Buddhism, and that really spoke to me. And just kind of like little by little, just going, this is my new plan. If I'm going to have a plan, and also being more comfortable with no plan, that's okay too. And that was something that previously in my old life would have terrified me to no end. So here I am, just like I was teaching art lessons to kids after school. And then I said, wait, this healing work has a lot to do with colors. I think I can incorporate this into my art classes and help kids become more emotionally regulated and more aware and build their emotional intelligence. And I was a elementary school teacher before, so that was easy for me to go, this fits here and this can help here, and creating curriculums and programs of my own with all these different bits and pieces. And so here I am.
Wow. First of all, thank you for so vulnerably sharing with us and for having the courage to turn your pain into purpose, the mess into your message, and for being here and for doing the work. And you mentioned art. And for those who are listening to the audio, she has beautiful artwork behind her in the background. You can watch it on YouTube to see. And we've been talking about together the role that art plays in healing, and you talked about working with the energy of color. Can you tell us what that means, and how can art serve as a medium for introspection, for self-connection, and for processing different emotions that may arise or that we may even be unconscious of?
Yeah. And that's where color, I think, a lot like sound healing uses frequency of sound to help actually reprogram cells in the body. I think that color as frequencies of light can also be such a great energy or a spark that subconscious change in us. When we're at the Institute of Healing Arts, when we're learning the Integrative Processing Technique, or for short, I call it IPT. IPT uses color as so visualizing emotions as color. And what's interesting about that scientifically is that color has been known to not actually be, well, different wavelengths of light, not actually color, that
Mhm.
actually what we're seeing is our emotional interpretation of that wavelength. So when we all see blue, there's no way for me to know that the blue I'm looking at is the blue you're looking at. We're all seeing the same exact thing. What I'm seeing is an emotional reaction to that wavelength, and I see it as blue. So because the left brain needs language to understand things and process things, and we process things through talking about it and explaining it. In IPT, I have someone, a client might explain what they're doing or what they're feeling or why. And then I will say, now pull that out in a color. And depending on what color they see it as, because it's very, very different. Like sad doesn't always have to be blue. Sometimes their sad is orange. Sometimes their sad is purple. And if, for example, it were green,
Mhm.
they said, oh, that feeling I'm talking about right now, that feels green. I'm going to pull green out in my visualization. I would say, okay, then that maybe has something to do with forgiveness. That might have a subconscious connection to needing approval, wanting love. And I might just start using that as a tool to ask the next questions that I ask in a process. So when I took that idea and said, let's use art, instead of pulling it out visually, we're actually going to paint it. We're going to take, um, let's say fear is usually one that we start with because almost everybody has fear in some situation or another. I'll say, let's word the situation around fear. If I had fear, what would it be about? And we use language. And then I say, now what color would it be? And then go put it or paint it out of your body. So then again, this is where it becomes energy work because we're energetically intentionally moving the energy out of our bodies onto canvas into a shape, containing it on the canvas in some way. And the whole time shifting those energies, we're just uncovering more and more belief systems.
Mhm.
So I think that that process is really cool because it's a little bit spiritual, it's a little bit emotional, it's a little bit mental, and it can't help but then heal physical because as we probably already can get to in this is all of the books that have been written about trauma in the body is that we hold energy in the body and it causes illness, right? So, I mean, I think we're all on the same page with that. I don't know if
Mhm.
there's many people who are like, that's not true. It's happening. We know it's happening. But as we were talking earlier about art, these art workshops that I do, I also am so impressed with how, and this is how I translated it with kids' art classes too, is how someone might feel about art, how they express themselves with visual art, or how they feel about doing that art is also a catalyst for healing.
Mhm.
Because I have many of the clients who come into my workshops, they're like, I'm not an artist. I don't know how to do art. I can't do this. I can only do stick figures. You've probably heard that a million times. I'm like, I can't do any art. And I am so incredibly amazed. I've had so many workshops and sessions where people come in and go, okay, this will be fun and everything, but I'm not an artist. I don't know how to do art. And I go, it's not an art class. It's a healing class. All you have to do is feel your feelings and paint them in whatever way they feel. So there's shapes and colors and all kinds of things. Sometimes they mix, sometimes we drip them all over the canvas. I mean, it's just whatever it is. There's no picture. We're not doing like a landscape or a vase and flowers. So there's so many that make what they make. And then I'm like, this is some of the most beautiful art I've ever seen from the people who said, I'm not an artist. I don't know what I'm doing. And I've seen like incredible paintings, something that I would absolutely see on an art gallery wall worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
So I'm like, you can't do art? Are you sure? And then the clients who, I was talking about a group session that I did where it's a bunch of therapists, mental health professionals that I was asked to go in and do my healing through art for them. It was kind of like a special thing for them as, a team of therapists. And there were a few of them that were like, um, is it weird or is it bad that I hate this? I hate what I'm making. I hate doing this. I don't like it. I don't like my art. I don't like what it's doing. I don't like any of this. And I just say, okay, let's sit with that feeling. Let's figure out what's going on there. Because we always bring in our inner child when we're doing these sessions. We bring back a past version of ourselves, and that's who we're working with through the entire session. So I'll say, okay, what if you turn to your child self and say to them what you just said to me? I hate this. I don't like this. And they're the ones who are painting it. How does that feel? And they're like, ooh.
Mm.
I said, maybe there was somebody who said that to her or him. Someone said they don't like what they're doing, they're not good enough, or made them feel that way in some way. So the art itself is, I think, a perfect modality to address all those uncomfortable things, all the trauma, all the belief systems we want to try to change, and the patterns we want to try to change around them. So I've brought that in and put that into almost everything I do. There's some kind of art.
Wow. Wow. So profound. Um, those who surprise themselves and, with their art, and also those who realize, the past conditioning around what they should and shouldn't be doing, and the perfectionism or the judgment. It can be so insightful, and because like when I think of art, I take away the pressure and the seriousness of like sitting and talking about your emotions, right? So it's in a more flowy medium. It feels perhaps a little safer for the nervous system for these insights to come to the surface. So, wow, I
I would
absolutely.
hope so. I
Mhm.
would hope it's that, and I found that it depends on people's relationship with art.
Mhm.
They're allowing judgment to cloud all of that, then they can start to see it through that lens of shame or, and then it's stressful. So I think that's kind of great because it just goes, all right, let's look at that. Let's work through that and figure out why. Why does that feel like that for you?
Wow. I love that. And as you were talking about the mind-body connection and how like trauma, the body holds score, and like the trauma is stored in the body. I was actually telling my fiance last night, which is so interesting. I was like, I love how like the therapeutic world has changed. Like in the past, it was all about talk therapy, and now we know there's this whole other side of it. And I was like, I hope that like older generation therapists are keeping up with the training to kind of incorporate that into their work. And so, you know, we know the body holds score and there's so many different somatic practices, but we also know that like energy healing can be so profound in releasing some of this as well. And you do chakra balancing and Reiki. Can we talk a little bit about how these modalities are contributing to our emotional and physical well-being? Because like we've talked about art as a medium, and so I'd like to now, talk about that the energy modalities.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, IPT is an energy healing. It
Mhm.
was going to be studied. BYU was bringing in their psychology program, and they were going to see if the IPT program could be an accredited um, program for them. They decided to keep it separate in the end, but I think it's interesting that that was really a lot of the therapists decided to go and do the program anyway and learn it because it's a really great kind of mold of the two.
Mhm.
You're still talking things out during it, so it does feel kind of like talk therapy, and as a lot of people have told me, compares to EMDR and some other forms of therapy that are out there. So what I've always loved is that I, trained in Reiki, and Reiki's only been around in Japan since like 1922, Usui Reiki. But I've just been going through a class recently that's all about the energy, the history of it, and all that. And it's so interesting to see how far back energy work has been. There's, Egyptian papyrus scrolls about energy healing and holistic healing. And I mean, we're pretty familiar with Eastern medicine and China and acupuncture and the meridians and the energy flow of the body, the chakra system in Sanskrit in India. So, you go back and you're like, we've been doing this for a long time.
Mhm.
The Bible has talked, about Jesus doing laying on of hands um, and and now science catching up to that and being able to see that we have photography now that can actually see the light up areas of the chakras in the body. We can see the difference. In that photography, they do one before a Reiki session and then one after, and see how everything expands and grows and the aura grows. I've done muscle testing, kinesiology in my work with IPT. So we do one where I put you on your arm to see how far your aura is before a session, and then after a session, how much further it expanded. And so energy following intention, energy follows intention. And so when someone else, a facilitator or healer, and by the way, a lot of people are very uncomfortable with the word healer, and I only use it because that's what people know it as.
Mhm.
But what makes a really good healer is knowing that we're not the ones doing the healing. We're just a facilitator. We're the ones with the knowledge to help facilitate the healing that's happening. And so all we're doing is intentionally taking energy that's around us, that's in you already, and using that to balance those chakras, to get the blocks out, to flow that energy, to clear any heavy energy that might be entities, or depending on belief systems, it's kind of like, some people are like, whoa, entities. And I'm like, you know what? That just means something that's attached itself to you from places you've been and what you've been doing and living life, right? We walk into places, you get energy that you don't want and that doesn't serve you, and we can clear that, get it, move it out of the way. But what I've always loved about that is I can do Reiki during an IPT session. And for me, I love a Reiki session because I do feel better afterwards.
Mhm.
But I I also really loved IPT sessions because I felt like someone put me in the driver's seat and said, now you drive. You drive to your destination. You're going to do your healing work. I'm just going to point you in the right direction and we're going to go. But when I first had an IPT session, that to me was what attracted me to that was maybe a little bit of that control part of me
Mhm.
too. It was like, do you want to know why you do the things you do? Do you want to know why? And then not just look at it like you would do in therapy, maybe is look at it But now, do you want to move it out? You want to pick up that bag and just chuck it out? And it just felt like I got to be the one who decided. It's empowering, really,
Hmm.
right?
Wow.
So does that help answer that question, or did I just
Yeah.
like go on a tangent with this?
No, I love it because we're kind of like attaching, like we're creating a process of first that is the awareness of like, let's bring to the surface that which we might have suppressed or that which, um, is not serving us, is limiting. And then now once it's at a service and it's at the surface and we have awareness of it, what do we want to do with it? Do we want to release it? Because sometimes also I've noticed that some people are hesitant in releasing things that aren't serving them because it's so familiar, choosing the familiar chaos over unfamiliar peace.
I've had IPT sessions where we're moving out a heavy energy, like maybe fear. And I'll say, okay, how much energy do you feel like your 4-year-old self, let's say, how much energy do you feel like they were putting into fear? That they were like spending time and energy being afraid and worrying about this. And they'll say a lot of energy. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, do you think they'd be willing to move it out? Do you think they'd be willing to give that up if they knew they were going to get something better for them? And as obvious as it may seem to be like, of
Mhm.
course, let's move fear out. I've had clients that are like, she's not ready. She won't
Mhm.
let it go. She's too afraid of what will happen if she doesn't be afraid
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
And to that, I usually go through then a process we call the game, which is I do this, hoping I'll get this. I'll say, what is the payoff that she gets for holding that? Let's list as many things as we can think of. How, what are all these things that she's doing? She's holding that fear. Now, what is it costing her? And then we list all of that. And we always replace it with something else. I never go through a session and be like, okay, now she doesn't have the fear. All's good now. We can move on. I'll be like, what's another way? Then this is where creativity comes in because you have to have a curious, creative,
Hmm.
connected mind to be able to go, if I don't do the thing I've always known, there's something else. There's something else I could do and I could get my needs met in a different way.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of like neurology, it's a lot
Hmm.
of like psychology, it's a lot of emotional healing, and then it's the energy work, all mixed into there. So it's a nice little mixing bowl of all the things.
I love that. I love that. It sounds so empowering, so insightful. Um, so what I want to talk about next is you mentioned it briefly when we were talking about Reiki and we're talking about all these ancient practices with the chakra balancing coming, out of India with the Egyptian work. How can we balance these ancient practices? You were talking about, the Celtic, so all of that. So how do we take these ancient practices, ancient spiritual practices that have been around for so long. Again, so funny we're having this conversation because last night I was telling, again, my fiance, like, oh my God, like in the past, like people would call you like a witch if you talked about these things and you'd be burned alive. And now we can like talk about it and like we can have podcast episodes about it.
Yeah.
So, this huge shift, yay for humanity, but how can we integrate these ancient spiritual practices into this like contemporary, super tech-driven modern life?
Yeah. And I'm not particularly good at the tech part. Even just putting out a website or doing that sends me into a tizzy. But just like I mentioned, like all these, you can go and set up a session with someone who does like chakra photography. They will go and do those kinds of things, which I think is a really cool way of being like, hey, we're bringing in this scientific proof for these noetic sciences that say we do have a soul. Here we can measure it. We've done this. And I think that's really cool. It also makes me a little miffed because I think about how, indigenous people of almost every continent on the earth has been like, yeah, we've been telling you forever that trees talk to each other. the idea of, and this is where it comes into like my paganism views and animism, um, being a really important part of seeing the world. Everything has energy, everything has a vibration, everything has soul. And so, here we are, like everybody's been saying in ancient times, trees talk to each other. They are sentient beings. They have a consciousness. This is part of the way it is. And then science is like, whoa, you guys, we totally just found out that this fungi system under the ground is like trees talking to each other. I'm like, yeah, I know. So for whatever reason, we need the science to kind of validate or corroborate with those science, those ancient beliefs. And I feel that even just having the respect and bringing in a level of decolonization within ourselves to be
Mm.
like, we knew this ancient wisdom all along. We're just reclaiming it, we're rediscovering it. And for me, it goes back to my own personal spiritual practice, which is to connect with land, to connect with self, to connect with source. For me, it's been a really tough road to be able to reconcile my ancestors being colonizers, especially because I live on Turtle Island and I am a descendant of Mormon pioneers. And you can go into the history of that, and it's awful. And I won't go into all that right now. But that's trauma too that holds in my DNA from ancestral and generational trauma. So my work, personal healing work, and my journey, talking about my journey again from the beginning, was also to say, how do I respect my ancestors more recently here on this land? How do I connect with the land that my ancestors colonized and didn't really have respect for? And also connect with my ancient ancestors in the motherland of Northern Europe. And I've been really, really, really mindful about that journey as well. So for me, it's that same uh, trying to partner that. I have a street sweeper going by, and I'm like, noisy. Sorry if you can hear that. So it goes back to like, okay, how do I respect and connect with this land that I'm on now, which is the more modern, for me, my history, and my ancestral homeland, and make that the practices that my ancestors did pre-Christian or during that period of time, and then mold those together. So
Mm.
when I learn new healing practices like IPT, I never forget that I'm also bringing forward uh, ancient Celtic mythology and the inspiration that shows me, and kind of giving all those practices a place to come together.
I love that. I love that. As you were sharing that and you were talking about animism, I was thinking about so my brother recently moved to Japan and I was with him for a couple of months. And I noticed it in Japan, this like, how with like Shintoism and the respects that they have for nature, for all the elements of their surrounding and the harmony, like everything for them is about nature's harmony. My mom was there for New Year's and they didn't have fireworks because it ruins the harmony of the surroundings. There's never, you don't see any trash bins because everyone kind of takes their trash and takes it home, and they're so conscious of the way they go through their trash, like open a water bottle, this part goes in here, that part goes in there, but so much respect for land,
Mm-hmm.
for surroundings. We went on a road trip to the west of Japan, and there were like so many beautiful cafes where in the middle of the forest, you would just go and watch the trees. And they have this whole concept of forest bathing, where you go in there and you just sit with nature for mental and physical health and alignment. And so I'm seeing, and they also are one of the world's leaders in modern technology, right? So it's that integration I saw it
Mm-hmm.
firsthand and I loved it. Um, and so I'm curious when you mention animism, how do you define that for you? And why do you believe it's like its role in spirituality is important in today's world?
I think you hit the nail on the head about just that respect and
Mhm.
connection and balance between, um, and again, this goes back to like the way that we've interacted with land um, previously, and by we, I mean my ancestors that came here, was so I love the book Braiding Sweetgrass. It talks a little bit about this in that book, and I've kind of there's another book called Root and Ritual that it kind of highlights this aspect, but it's like first we have to start decolonizing ourselves, our mentality, and the way that we interact with land and space. We have for so long now, for generations, treated land and animals and trees and plants as objects that are here for our use.
Mhm.
The idea of manifest destiny, right? The idea that God put it there for us, so it's us for us to use, and the issue that we have with that and not understanding our relationship is to be a steward of the land, a steward in relationship with these beings, our kin. It is a detriment to the land itself
Mhm.
for ecological reasons and all of that. There's an idea called ecofeminism where they talk about how we as a society treat and view women can also correspond and correlate with how we treat land. It's for our use. It's just for us to get what we need out of it. It's to be fertile and to grow the things we want to grow and use. And so, I mean, whether you agree with that or not, it's just an interesting idea to think about. And I can't remember who said it, but there was somebody who said, I think it's in Braiding Sweetgrass, where she says, those who came here and colonized this land may not have ever put roots here. They didn't actually see it as home. They have always seen the land they came from as home. And so the land they came to here, they've always had one foot on the boat,
Mhm.
right? So it's this idea that like even us generations later, was my like great 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 grandmother from Denmark who came, but have I ever really seen this land as my own, as I belong to it and it belongs to me equally, and that I'm to care for it in that way? I mean, we just kind of treat it like it's disposable, dispendable.
Mhm.
And I think that in Japan, because they have been in that land for so long, I mean, they know they better respect it and treat it right. It takes care of them.
Mhm.
And I think that the culture reflects that from
Mhm.
what I've read and learned about Japanese culture is that respect is so important. We're missing a lot of that, America being fairly a new nation, and I dare say Canadians might be a little better than we are. I don't know, but I'm like, Canadians respect. Americans, not so much. We can work on it. We could do better. So, like, just being able to say there are certain things that are not available for capitalism. Some things are available to people because it's a basic human need that we all have. Just our relationship and our mental image of how we perceive things, it can actually bleed into other things in our life, our relationships with each other, our relationships with our children, our relationships with our parents, our community, our sense of community with each other. It takes a village to raise a child, or some of those aspects of ancient times that they
Mhm.
understood in a tribal sense. We take care of each other, we take care of the tribe. We've lost that in also that disrespect that we have with the relationship we have with land, trees, our kin, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's my
I
heritage.
love that. I want to echo the last part because I always tell everyone that listen, we're traditionally tribal people. We thrive in supportive communities, and now we have this like illusion that we're super connected because of social media. But we really need to lean into community, build these communities, stay connected with one another. And part of that, exactly as you said, is the land that we live on, and kind of realizing that nothing belongs to me, and to kind of not take that for granted, to love, to honor, to respect, because we really are one with it, right? So, like, our womb is like the universe inside of us. It's like everything is one, right? It's just we're moving it
Acted,
around.
yeah.
I love that. I
Totally.
love that. We can go on for forever, but I've been really loving this conversation
It's a
and
lot.
all the nuggets of wisdom that you've shared with us. How can the audience connect with you? Do you have online art classes, or does it have to be in person in Utah?
I'm working on a way that I could maybe do some of the healing through art that I do over Zoom. We had I do a healing through art full moon course.
Mhm.
And I have just 6 spots available because that's what I can fit around to my little table here. But I also like it's very intimate with just 6 of us. So we just meet every month around the full moon and do a release. And then we use the cycles of the moon to go through a healing cycle of descent, confrontation, connection, and then emergence into the light. So we're using the full moons, and so we have an online space where we connect with each other throughout the month, and then we get together and do a healing through art release around the full moon. And one of the times we were doing it this last 6 month course, it was snowing so bad nobody could make it to my house. And I said, you guys, let's just try it on Zoom. Does everybody have something like crayons, anything you can color with? Because all you need is some color. It doesn't matter what medium it is. So we did it over Zoom, and I thought, okay, this is something that I think I could do. So for now, I can do that. If you wanted to hire me for a private session, we could do that over Zoom. And then I may make those classes available to register for. For now, I've got another full moon course coming up in April that people can sign up for if you're local here in Utah, South Jordan, where I'm at, and come do that with me. But all of the sessions that I do one-on-one, the IPT, the Reiki, or I do intuitive card reading sessions as well, drumming sessions, they are available on Zoom. And so my website is prism-healing.com. Prism as in colors, not prison as in you're going to prison. I can do my work in prison if anybody needs me to, but it's prism with an M. Yeah. So that's available. And I have a lot of different classes available that are some are over Zoom and some are in person.
Amazing. And I'll put that in the show notes so people can click on it to learn more about your work and to connect with you. Once again, thank you so, so much for taking the time to share with us your insights, your experience, and kind of just really creating space and holding space for us to serve as a reminder to connect back to Mother Earth as a form of connection to self. So that was a very, very beautiful and profound, potent reminder. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share that and for your amazing questions to get us on track.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Speak soon.